There were so many nights when I, as a young boy, had to watch helplessly as my father verbally and physically abused my mother. I can still recall the smell of alcohol, see the fear in my mother's eyes, and feel the hopeless despair that comes when we see people we love hurting each other in incomprehensible ways. I would not wish that experience on anyone, especially if I dwell on those memories. I can feel myself wanting to hurt my father back, in the same ways he hurt my mother, and in ways of which I was incapable as a small boy. I see my mother's face, and I see this gentle human being whom I loved so very much and who did nothing to deserve the pain. When I recall this story, I realize how difficult the process of forgiving truly is. Intellectually, I know my father caused pain because he himself was in pain. Spiritually, I know my faith tells me my father deserves to be forgiven as God forgives us all. But it is still difficult. The traumas we have witnessed or experienced live on in our memories. Even years later, they can cause us fresh pain. If I traded lives with my father, if I had experienced the stresses and pressures my father faced, if I had to bear the burdens he bore, would I have behaved as he did? I do not know. I hope I would have been different, but I do not. My father has long since died, but if I could speak to him today, I would want to tell him that I had forgiven him. What would I say to him? I would begin by thanking him for all the wonderful things he did for me as my father, but then I would tell him that there was this one thing that hurt me very much. I would tell him how what he did to my mother affected me. Perhaps he would hear me out, perhaps he would not, but still I would forgive him. Why would I do such a thing? I know it is the only way to heal the pain in my boyhood heart. Forgiveness is not dependent on the actions of others. Yes, it is certainly easier to offer forgiveness when the perpetrator expresses remorse and offers some sort of reparation, or then, you can feel as if you have been paid back in some way. You can say, I am willing to forgive you for stealing my pen, and after you give me my pen back, I shall forgive you. This is the most familiar pattern of forgiveness. We don't forgive to help the other person. We don't forgive for others. We forgive for ourselves. Forgiveness, in other words, is the best form of self-interest. Forgiveness takes practice, honesty, open-mindedness, and a willingness, even if it is a weary willingness, to try. It isn't easy. Perhaps you have already tried to forgive someone and just couldn't do it. Perhaps you have forgiven and the person did not show remorse or change his or her behavior or own up to his or her offenses, and you find yourself unforgiving all over again. It is perfectly normal to want to hurt back when you have been hurt. But hurting back rarely satisfies. We think it will, but it doesn't. If I slap you after you slap me, it does not lessen the children grew, they found new, and remarkably creative, ways of testing our patience, our resolve, and our rules and limits. We learned time and again to turn their transgressions into teaching moments. But mostly we learned to forgive them over and over again, and fold them back into our embrace. We know our children are so much more than the sum of their stories are more than rehearsals of their repeated need for forgiveness. We know that even the things they did wrong were opportunities for us to teach them to be citizens of the world. We have been able to forgive them because we have known their humanity. We have seen, in the 1960s, South Africa was in the fierce grip of apartheid. When the Bantu education system of inferior education for black children was instituted by the government, Leah and I left the teaching profession in protest. We vowed we would do all in our power to ensure our children were never subjected to the brainwashing that passed for education in South Africa. Instead, we enrolled our children in schools in neighboring Swaziland. 6 times each year we made the 3,000-mile drive from Alice in the Eastern Cape to my parents' home. After spending the night with them, we would drive 5 hours to Swaziland, drop off or pick up the children at their schools and drive back to Krugersdorp to rest before the long drive home. There were no hotels or inns that would accommodate black guests at any. During one of those trips, my father said he wanted to talk. I was exhausted. We were halfway home and had driven 10 hours to drop the children at school. Sleep beckoned. We still had another 15-hour drive back to our home in Alice. Driving through the Karoo, that vast expanse of semi-desert in the middle of South Africa, I told my father I was tired and had a headache. We'll talk tomorrow, in the morning, I said. We headed to Leah's mother's home half an hour away. The next morning, my niece came to wake us with the news. I was grief-stricken. I loved my father very much, and while his temper pained me greatly, there was so much about him that was loving, wise and witty. And then there was the guilt. With his sudden death I would never be able to hear what he had wanted to say. Was there some great stone on his heart that he had wanted to remove? Might he have wanted to apologize for the abuse he had inflicted on my mother when I was a boy? It has taken me many years to forgive myself for my insensitivity, for not honoring my father one last time with the few moments he wanted to share with me. Honestly, the guilt still stings. When I reflect back across the years to his drunken tirades, I realize now that it was not just with him that I was angry. I was angry with myself. Cowering in fear as a boy, I had not been able to stand up to my father or protect my mother. So many years later, I realize that I not only have to forgive my father, It is how we free ourselves from our past errors. It is how we are able to move forward into our future, unfettered by the mistakes we have made.
This powerful lesson comes from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who teaches us about the true meaning of forgiveness. He shares painful memories from his childhood, where he saw his father hurt his mother. He felt anger and even a desire for revenge. But later, he realized something important: people who hurt others are often hurt themselves. Tutu explains that forgiveness is not weakness. It is actually the strongest thing a person can do. It does not depend on whether the other person says sorry or not. Forgiveness is something we do for our own peace. He also teaches that no human is completely good or completely bad. Everyone makes mistakes. That's why forgiveness is necessary in every relationship. He calls it the best form of self-interest, because when we forgive, we free ourselves from pain and suffering. One of the most emotional moments in his life was when his father died before he could make peace with him. This taught him another lesson: the importance of forgiving ourselves too. In the end, Desmond Tutu reminds us, saying, "I am sorry," is hard, but it brings freedom. Forgiving others and ourselves is the key to healing and living a peaceful life. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe our channel to get more support for making videos. See you again.